Good morning. My name is Mark, here today to talk about the RFP. We'll get started here in just a minute as we're letting everybody into our room. We want to thank you for joining us on YouTube Live. And now we're letting everybody in our Zoom class as well. My name is Mark, here today to talk about the RFP. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start letting everybody into the room here. It is a Monday after a long week. A lot of us have been taking off some time. In fact, I have too. So we're not quite sure how large the crowd will be today, but we are live on YouTube. And this is a session that you can join there. If you do have questions, though, please log into our Zoom room. While you're in the Zoom room, maintain your mute status. That'll help everybody in the background. Individuals will be coming in and out. Just as a footnote, this is a recorded version on YouTube Live, and you're able to go in and actually and watch this immediately after. You go to youtube.com/govdirections and just click on our live or streaming area, and you'll see hundreds of videos. In fact, they're available for you, but this one here will be immediately available after. This particular session, we're going to talk about the request for proposal and what you need to look out for when you find one that matches you, and which is the goal. And I want to thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections, and we have been around since 1998. This is actually we started over a long July 4th holiday back then, and now 25 years in the making. We're certainly glad you are using our services. Our primary objective is to not only deliver you access to the local, state, and federal government RFP listings that are available each day, around 5,000 on average, and some 1.5 million a year. In fact, so it's an active system matching to what your company is seeking to bid on. In a $6 trillion marketplace. And so that's our primary objective. But we learned really within the first couple of years that you need some help. And so we formed GovSchool. And GovSchool is a platform where we teach and help you. I think some of you, if you've sat in our sessions, I actually teach at a major university and in the area of public administration. I actually teach the other side, where I'm working with future contracting officers and helping them understand how to craft the RFP and write bids and invitations to requests for information and so forth. And the primary objective is to get your attention. And so I sat down one day. I said, "What if I reverse this class?" And here is what I do. And so I turn it around and say, now you're the contracting officer. You're working with the contracting officer. What are you as a contractor looking to, what you should be watching out for? What do you need to look out for in the whole process of bidding and responding? And so that's the theme of this class. And I'm going to spend together about 30 minutes, just kind of walking through. I don't rush. I'm a big believer in experiential learning. So if you have some questions, you want me to browse around, feel free to type those into the chat box. The chat box is over here to the left generally. And I usually start off by giving you a couple of pieces of good information. One is the slide showed, okay? And so let me just share that with you, copy the link, and I'm gonna put that in the chat box so that you can have a copy of the slides and later on, and you might want to refer back to them. The other is, I got so many questions about how to read an RFP that I wrote a little booklet about it. It's not a fancy book or anything. It didn't have a publish, but more in PDF format. And I want to share that with you as well, so that you can download it and you can use it to your as you see fit. Okay, and so it's there. And final, I actually have the individual slides in the PDF version, and then I'll share those with you as well. Okay, so that you have some takeaways here. And I want you to make sure that you focus in on some of these pieces of information that will help you in the process of working with government. So here we are at GovSchool, and I want to welcome you. We've been doing a lot of classes in 2023. As our goal is really to expand. If you have any questions about our schedule, you can go to govschool.com/schedule, and you'll see those active classes where you can actually participate. And then, of course, on YouTube Live for those that are recording. And always, when you're learning about government contracting, I always go back to this quote here with Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own. It's supposed to be hard. Okay, if it were easy, everyone would do it. So don't let the intimidation be a factor in this process. Just work through it, but it's not so hard that you can't do it. Okay, and you just got to pay attention to some of the things I talk about here today, and you're going to be successful. It's a $6 trillion marketplace. There's plenty of room for you and your business. So please just have persistence. That's the number one. In fact, I'll just start sharing. I have worked in a bid. I should say I started a bid on probably over 1,000 plus RFPs and bids in my 35-year career now. I've always told you don't really talk about over year 25, but I've worked in this space for a long time. And I did that before I started Gov Directions. And I actually have continued to do that. Historically, I have a specialty in human resource management, and I'll actually use some of that in my discussion today. But I have won projects in 34 states. I have owned about 350 total projects where I solicited, I went in and pitched, and then won that project and completed the project during my career. So I'm going to share with you some of those experiences in the process. Okay. And so feel free to ask me questions as we go along. Today, the primary purpose is to identify the structure of an RFP. The RFP is the primary document that a local government, a state government, and even the federal government will use to seek your input as an expert, subject matter expert. And I'm going to walk through each section and explain the importance of those sections in order to, make sure that everyone's treated uniformly, and there's a process for making sure they're acquiring the services and supplies that they need in this government space. And I'm going to use an actual RFP as an example to identify those sections. And I'm also going to share with you some concepts of artificial intelligence and how do you respond. I think a lot of us have been watching chat-related services, Chat PDF, Chat GPT, and others that are now becoming, whenever I remember flying back and from 1999, I think it was, and I was on a plane. Coming out of Idaho, and we were looking at acquiring a project out there, and I was reading about Google and this new thing that had come up about search, and thought, this is going to change the world. And sure enough, it pretty much has. And so I think that's where we're at. We're the beginning stages of AI and how we're going to use it in the future. I'm going to show you how to make sure you get the most out of it today. And so, the first thing part of this concept of contracting, bids and contracting is why we do this and how do we engage. The whole theory of the firm, if you went to, just as you went to college, you probably learned some of these basic theories of why we go out and actually hire individuals and why do we form companies, why do we form firms. The whole theory of we don't need to do everything ourselves. And we can, reach out to others who have a subject matter expert, and we create a contract to govern that process, and then acquire the services and supplies. And so that's really the whole firm. It's Ronald Coase is the theory of the firm, and he speaks to that, and that whole area has matured in study over the last 50, 60, 70 years, and we refer back to that. And so what we do is we create these instruments. And I use the word instrument to kind of demonstrate, it's kind of having to make sure you got the same piece of music on each page, and that you understand what the government wants, and the government understands what they're asking of you. So that you can actually make sure you have success in that. And so we use these instruments, and the common ones that you see are right here in front of you. We have traditionally the more general request for information, or request for qualifications, and the source of sought. This is when the government basically engages with the marketplace, says, we need something done. We need someone to help us with a supply provision. We need somebody to help us with a service. And we're trying to determine if there's someone out there that can do this. And we need to know if there's a marketplace. And then within that, in general, when there is a marketplace, is there a small business marketplace, or is it only really the big guys that can help us? And so they try to determine that. And so they'll issue the request for information, just a general call for individuals to respond. And then they'll ask for, sometimes in special industries like engineering or legal, or even in some of the trades like plumbing, HVAC, they'll ask for qualifications. They want to make sure that you're certified, that you're able to do what they need, and that you've got the appropriate licensing and so forth. Or just in general, the source of sought. For example, we see the flood situation in the Northeast today, and governments will need some assistance in helping them recover. And oftentimes they'll go out and tell you what they need, sometimes even say, if you can help us, tell us how you can help us. Maybe that's from housing individuals who've been displaced, or potentially tent rentals where they're going in and helping, host places where people can come and get essential supplies. Or even, going back in and rehabbing homes that have been destroyed, or roofing that potentially has been destroyed, replacing HVAC, things like this. These types of items, the RFI, the RFQ, and the source of salt, they're looking for you to respond back to them and tell them about your capabilities. You'll oftentimes hear the term capability statement, and that basically is a one-page document, two pages at the max, that really outlines what you do as a company. It's not your resume, but it gives them essential company information. For example, your formation of how you're actually in business, your LLC or your partnership. What's your UEI number, unique entity ID, when you're dealing with the federal government? What NAICS codes do you serve when you're dealing with the federal government again, or potentially local government NIGP commodity codes, or the United Nations standardization codes, or the SIC codes? You'll hear these terminologies, and even the product service codes that you do. This allows the government really quickly to know that you're a valid company and that you meet a specific need that they have. And then a lot of times they want you to expand on your executive mission, and then your core competencies. What are you really good at? And then what differentiates your company? And so these are specific items in a capability statement that is traditionally defined by the contracting officers who are looking to hire you. And it allows them to take you and compare you equally to others who are potentially also providing them assistance of some sort, of a product of some sort. And so they can treat you all fairly, because that's important, that there's an equitable and fair process in the acquisition of good. And I'll get a quick question. I'll stop and answer this question. What if you're an emerging business? You have experienced personnel, but the business is new. This is a common question I get, so I like to stop and always answer that. Just a note: when governments will ask you, about your qualifications and experience, sometimes they'll say, "Give us some projects that you've worked on." A lot, if you've done those as a company, then you should put those up front. But if you haven't, then obviously there's some reason why you're in this business. You're an entrepreneur of some sort. You've got some past experience. You're there to sell yourself. So take that opportunity and then sell what your personal experience is, but even potentially that you've worked for someone else. For example, a lot of the contracts I've worked on, I've worked as a subcontractor with a primary provider, and oftentimes his name is up front, but I'm out there doing some of the work as well. So I include that in my background. But I also didn't mention that it's as a subcontractor, I've done this in the process. So as a former employee, I worked for 10 years in a local government association management team. And so a lot of times I get called on to come in and help with projects related to that. And so I refer back to that experience in my capability statement, or in the response back to the RFI, or even when the RFQ, I can speak to it at all. So I don't have to focus specifically on the business itself. I can focus more on the experienced personnel when I do that. Governments are fine with that. Okay. So don't let that scare you off in any way. And then, of course, you have the more formal solicitation process, the invitation to quote. I should point out that all of these are referred to as solicitations. But here in a quote, I might be in a situation where somebody calls me and say, "Hey, I need you to come on location for a day, help me out with this project. Here's exactly what you got to do. What's your quote?" Give them a price, go out there and do the work. That's a very quick process, informal typically, and oftentimes in a very limited audience. Governments are trying to hire me. They know my background. Okay, so these are oftentimes used, just the ITQ. Invitation to bid, a more formal request for a quote. It may be the specifications are they're laid out for you. You provide, red fans, and they're all specifically have these specs that you're going to provide. And so everybody that provides those or is able to sell them is equally at the table. And then you're all able to get back a quote, a price, a bid. Okay. But it's more formal. And you got maybe 20, 30 days to respond. And everybody is able to do that. Sometimes you're even able to give alternative quotes, alternative bids based on alternative specs. And so it's a process that governs that. Oftentimes, though, it ends up in a discussion about lowest cost, or lowest, the fairest cost and the best quality. There's a combination of some of those, but it's a very specific document that you're responding back to. Oftentimes, just fill in the blank. Okay. And then finally, you have the request for proposal. And this is what I traditionally will respond back to. These are the documents that are requesting somebody's subject matter expertise. And they're there for you to, sorry, I'm getting calls here left and right. I need to take just a quick break. Hold on one second. Hold on one second there. Apologize. My apologies. My wife called. I had to take that call. That sometimes happens when you're doing live sessions. And I appreciate your getting in there. And so we got the request for proposal. And that's what we're going to spend some time on, the RFP. And there, this is really my favorite because it does allow you to shine. You're asked to give them some additional information, and they're asking for your expertise, and that's why they're seeking you out. They can't do everything internally in a government. It just doesn't. It's not cost effective. As we talk about the theory of the firm, there's reasons why they hire you out, and you're there to sell yourself. So what is a request for proposal? Well, a request for proposal is a solicitation oftentimes made through a bidding process by an agency or company interested in procurement of a commodity, service, or valuable asset that to potential suppliers to submit business proposals. And so I'll give you the formal definition. Now I'm going to dissect it a little bit. Okay, the first thing to remember, it is a solicitation. They want you to respond. Okay, a lot of times I get a call and I ask a question is, Mark, isn't this already a done deal? Haven't they already decided they're going to hire? It looks like this thing was written for my competitor. And the truth of the matter is, it is not a done deal. If they're going out for RFPs, then it is an active market. Okay, they're looking for competition. They have so many other options to go in and bid and hire someone that they don't need to do this process if it's not necessary. Okay. And so I share that with you because I don't want you thinking it's a waste of my time. This is something that's already decided. In fact, I always tell my clients whenever they work with us, if what you should do is go ahead and draft an RFP as if you were hiring yourself and use this as a marketing effort to give out to local governments. Because a lot of times the reason why it looks like it's been written for someone else is because someone else has already written it. And it's because the governments don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. If they can find this information already available, then they should do that. And it is through a bidding process. That means you're competing with others. Okay. And you gotta shine. And it's not always, in fact, it's typically not low cost. So it's just not cost analysis. Or pricing analysis. It's also performance. They want your qualifications and experience. And it's a combination of those. What's your method of doing something? That's where you shine with experienced personnel. And so forth. There's different methods that'll give you an evaluation criteria. And then they want you to submit a proposal. Okay. And that is because it is a valuable asset, something they're spending a lot of time. Oftentimes they've went through a 1.5 year process to go out and actually get to this point, to actually issue the RFP. So there's been a lot of people in an elaborate decision-making process that have been involved. And so they don't want to waste their time. And so they want you not to waste waste their time with some things that are not business-like or proposals that are not business-like, because you need to take it seriously and get them back the results. And oftentimes, you'll lead into the actual winning. So that's where you find yourself in a situation where the procurement officer is going through and really, checking to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And then you'll find that that's their primary objective. And then when you get in the door, that's whenever they get to evaluate all of the different companies. And when you heard me saying earlier, I pitch a lot of them. That's because just about every contract I win, it is a second step process where I get in there. Once I give them my response, then I have to get in there and actually win the RFP through a pitch. And that's why I always tell the second thing I tell the clients is never be creative when you're dealing with the government. Only give them what they're asking you. Okay. And you'll find that to be a more successful process. Okay. You get to be creative in step 2. Okay. There you can be creative. You're at the door, you're talking with them, you can engage with them in a way that's what your traditional sales practice would be involved with. But when you're first getting the door, trying to get through the door, you got to make sure you do everything. You can set yourself up a checklist and you check off the items that you're responsible for giving them back. In fact, what you're going to find in the typical parts of an RFP will help govern how you respond. First, it's going to be a statement of work. Okay. If you watch any of my videos, I always harp on this, but the statement of work, it should be brief, accurate, and clear. And when you read it, it should speak to you. In fact, it should do more. It should help you, when talking about this, the same sheet of music, the instrument, it should be playing a song in your head. And that is, you're the one that I wanted to find. Okay. And you should look at that RFP, and that's what you need to be saying. That's a Coldplay song. And if it doesn't say that, you need to move along. Okay. Because that means it's not for you. It's a $6 trillion marketplace. You'll find the right RFP. You don't need to be wasting your time on ones that don't really fit you for some reason. Okay. And so, and the way do you know it fits you? Because the first, there's 3 sentences statement of work is exactly what you do. It probably should mirror up with your capability statement in your executive summary. Okay, that you put up there. And then you'll also find technical specs. The technical specs there, they'll list them oftentimes in an ordered process. And here, it doesn't have to match up to you 100%, but a high degree. And you kind of have to know, you have to measure that over time. My threshold is about 75%. If it's about 75% of things I can do, then I'm going to pursue it. Okay, if it's not, then I'm going to probably walk away from it. But I can't do everything. You're not going to be able to do everything. So 25% of that, you may have to team with others, or there might be another alternative eventually down the road. Okay, and most likely, if you're in this field and you're competing, then the other ones you're competing against, they're going to find the same thing. You're not able to do some specific items. Okay, but the technical specs you're going to need to speak to, and if it's in an ordered way, then you need to respond back to it in the ordered process. And you should start picking up on these technical specs over time. And I have a whole list of ones that I've seen. And so I always have an answer already written up in my Google Drive for those specifications that I come across, so that I can make sure I get a good match to them. And I work on that over time. And so start building that depository of information, where you're putting the information that you're going to use for the future in a Google Drive. I just plug that. Schedule. Here is going to be 2 parts of the schedule. One's going to how you're going to respond to them, and the other is how you're going to actually do the work they're asking you to do. Both will sometimes help you with your cost breakdown or your costing. If they want a quick response and a quick schedule, obviously they're going to have to pay a little bit more. If you have time and more standardized, then maybe you can adjust your cost a little bit. And so these are things that you're going to want to watch for, but always pay attention to it. Don't expect the government to adjust their schedule to you. Okay, it's not going to happen. So if they give you 10 days, you got to be able to respond in 10 days. If they require you to deliver a list of deliverables, this next item within 30 days, you got to be able to do it, or you should probably walk away from the contract. Okay, they'll probably do a reissue if there's a rebid, if some people can't meet that deliverables or the schedule. Okay, the list of deliverables, this is a big part of, really part of your profit, as well as the contract terms and conditions. Here's what you got to do, when you got to do it, and here's what we're going to pay you for. And so make sure you can do all of those. If you can't do something, have an alternative. Any of these, even when you don't, like technical specs you can't meet, or the list of deliverables you can't meet, don't gloss over it. Tell them up front you can't do it. Okay, it's important that you speak to it at all times. If you got an alternative, provide the alternative. Okay, and have that. In the contract terms, conditions, don't expect the state attorney or the local county attorney, local city attorney, or the department attorney for the federal to make any changes for you, because it's not going to happen. And you got to live with them. So you read through those and make sure you understand the forbearance and the things how are you going to respond if there's something that happens that you can't get out of, a mistake happens, or there's a problem, or there's a delay in the project. How is that going to be cured? And understand that going into it. A lot of us got caught with COVID, and we had projects on the board, and then all of a sudden you had no projects on the board. And then how do you get out of that? Well, a lot of us put a lot of money into the things up front, and you expect to get paid when you win a contract. And so you got to be able to deal with that, okay, and know that, and make sure you pay attention. That is definitely your profits. The best thing of all when you're dealing with government is they're going to tell you how to respond. I always get it, Mark, do you have a template for us? You have an RFP template? Listen, you don't need one. The government is going to tell you what they need for you to do. Now, you do need to practice on your writing and your technical writing, and practice the ABCs, accuracy, brevity, clarity, in different formats for your response. But the format of the actual response for any individual RFP they're going to tell you how to do it within the RFP. And you got to pay attention. If they want 10 front, back, then you need to give them 10 pages front and back. If they want 1.5, I looked at this weekend for someone, they want exactly 1.15 between sentences. in terms of, I guess it's inches. It was that specific. And they, and they'll tell you they want 10 copies. You got to give them 10 copies. Okay. One original, or if you got to send it to them in a travel drive, something like that, you got to do all these things. So make sure you understand what they're asking for and how they're going to do that. And then, and as a part of that, they're going to tell you what kind of qualifications and experience they're looking for. Now, just like with the technical specs and lists of rules, just because you don't have everything they're looking for doesn't mean you shouldn't respond. They're just telling you, here's the ideal situation. And the likelihood is you're going to be right there, well qualified with everyone else. And you just have to sell yourself the right way. And that's where you need to do your performance research or price research sometimes to get to that cost, in fact. But performance research is when you measure your experience with others and your qualifications with others. And then as a factor of that, determine how you're going to cost out. When I first started, my first project took me 7 months to win the first project, and it was in Vermont, and I'm a Georgia native, and it really had, I think it's very little travel in Vermont up to that time, but I had a relationship of some sort where I did some of this type of work in the past and was cost analysis. And so I bid on the project and actually won it. As a part of that, though, I had to get very low in my costing. I was at a 25th percentile in the costing as opposed to, median or mean. And then, so nowadays I'm bidding in the 75th percentile. That means I'm 75% higher than anybody else that I bid against, because my qualifications have grown to such a level I can do that. Initially, though, I didn't have that luxury, so I had to cheapen myself. And maybe I shouldn't use the word cheapen because I did a good job on that. What I did lower my cost, and I bid at a lower level. So you have to understand that and break that out. And that's how you're looking at the cost breakdown. Oftentimes, costing itself is to be separated in an RFP, so they're not even going to look at that to begin with. And even then, the evaluation part of it is very low, 10, 15%. 80% oftentimes is going to be your experience and qualifications and your understanding of the methodology required and so forth. And they're going to tell you how they're going to break that down in the evaluation criteria. And so you should pay attention to it. Okay. And, as you go through and you see these, the other thing I always like to tell you is that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. This is Parkinson's law, meaning if they only give you 10 days to respond, then you got to do it in 10 days. If they give you 90 days, take 90 days. Okay, I just wrote an RFI they allowed us 90 days to pull everything together, and I sent it to them the day before. I started work on it 90 days ago. Okay, but the same process I can do in 10 days if I have to. Okay, or 3 days if I have to. And so I have this I set up a Google Drive. If you don't have a Google Drive, give us a call. We help that as a service to help you set it up so you can put everything that you need in one place and you have it there. There's other software out there. Monday is another one. It's a great one that I've used in the past to kind of organize especially if you have a team working on a project. Okay, and it's there for you. And just some quick tips before I actually go and do some experiential learning with you. I'm going to show you your RFP. First, make sure you always read the entire proposal. Okay. That is, once you get past that scope of work, okay, if it isn't, scope of work doesn't match me, I'm walking away from it. I'm not going to waste my time. Okay. Pay attention to the areas that we discussed. Okay. And you remember those all there, right there. Okay. And pay attention to each area. Sometimes it's not laid out as succinctly as this is right here. So you may have to go in and kind of pull that together. Set it aside and think about it, though, and talk to your colleagues to make sure you're a good fit. Don't just go after a bid or RFP if you're not really a good fit. It's, one of the things I like to actually do before I actually work with someone, as or a city, I'll go in and look at the votes of that city council in the past. And if there are a lot of 3-4, 4-3 votes, I don't really want to work with them because they're not. It just kind of indicates they're not really working together. It's probably a contentious environment. Sometimes now you can watch them on video. So these are just small things that I'm not going to be a good fit. That's going to really drag you down and send you into. It's just not going to be a fun experience. I give you some horror stories that you might want to hear, but it's not worth it. Sometimes you just walk away from it. Other times, make sure I'm a good fit. I love to work in South Dakota and North Dakota. This is some great fishing up there. I was out last week fishing, and so there's reasons why I want to work in places. So there's other ways that you look at things. It's not just about the business relation. Sometimes I call these indicators of success. Okay, and so if I see this indicator and another indicator and another, then yeah, this is one I'm going to pursue. It's a good fit for me. But if it doesn't match those, then it's not a good fit, even if it's a project right up my alley. And I want to be aware of that going into it. And then you sit down, complete the proposal, and send it off. Okay. And make sure you get it back to them within that schedule. The schedule is so important. They tell you they want it there by 12 noon, don't get it there at 1 p.m. They're not going to make any exceptions for you. Story after story I get from folks who don't get back in time. So here we go. The only source of knowledge is experience. And so I'm going to let's go out there and take a look at an actual RFP. And I'm going to use something that we're working on now called chat RFPs. So we can come back and help you understand how to use some of the new technology to learn and read about projects. One of the things that RFP delivery, and just as a quick reminder, RFP delivery is our primary mechanism to deliver new bids and RFPs now. We've launched this on top of our GovDirections product, which has become our capture system. And so this here more of a direct using AI and other methods to come in and actually pinpoint opportunity for you through matching. Okay, and you can do that by going in and setting your settings, receiving a daily alert, or downloading our app, which is now a concept of alerting without any sense of time. Okay, so it's as soon as something happens, you're alerted, and you can log on there and read that. So make sure you download our app. That's now in the Google Store or in the App Store. You can always make sure you save bids there, but I always like to go in and do some quick searches to find things. And this is always even beyond my daily alerting systems, because I can always, as you probably know, you can come in and do some quick keyword search. So for example, if I was doing compensation studies, it's a Boolean search technique. Both words have to be together. You can use conjunctions to identify and limit. Okay, so compensation study is one way, or I can go in and do filters, and I can save my filters. So if I primarily work in the consulting human resource field, then I can come in and look at those. We crosswalk every single listing by category, by NAICS code or by NIGB commodity code. So you don't have to worry about it. So if you're in this field, then you can come in and you can just generally search them. What I don't do is both of these options at the same time. And I not really want to go in there and limit myself too much when I'm doing these, because you'll start ruling yourself out when you first start. Cast a wide net. Save the filter or apply the filter. When you save it, it's always then stored up there at the top where it said my filters, and it runs at the same time. And so when I go in, I look here, there's one solicitation for executive search firm, human resource search services in Idaho. Let me go look at this one. I like Idaho. That's another good fishing spot. Let's see what's there. So I open that up. I'm gonna have some basic information. This is going to be within the state of Idaho there. It looks like it's for the administration department. We're going to tell you the RFP number, a phone number to call, give you the due date, and you're able to download the RFP, save the bid if you're interested, and capture it. Go ahead and just capture this one so I can look at it later. Michael Cano is the contact person. But if you're interested, our primary objective at this point is to get you to leave us, go to the original source. And at the original source, at this point in time, you're working directly with the government. Okay, and so here's Idaho and their bids and purchasing here. And see, in this particular case here, there was a note that tells you at the bottom that it looks like we can't link directly to it. Sometimes that happens. Let's just make sure. At this point, though, you have left us and you're now working. So if you have a question or a technical question about the bid, you should contact the government itself. And then you will find they want you to do that. They want to work with you. At the same time, we don't abandon you at our system. So if you have some needs and you haven't ever looked at one before, or you haven't read one before, we're here to assist you in making sure you can do that. Looks like this one uses an e-procurement system. Here's the bid openings. I'm going to drive into it. And now when I'm doing this, oftentimes I might be required to register in a third-party system. I'm knowing they're not always the easiest to use. Sorry about that. Knowing though that you don't have to pay anybody. Okay, even when they suggest you have to pay, you don't have to pay. Okay, and you pull that out. This one's not the easiest system to use. I probably should have thought through that one when I looked on. Let's look at another one. Okay, I'm letting that pull up. It takes a few seconds sometimes to come. Here's classification compensation study in North Carolina, another area. I just came back from where I was fishing. I was in the North Carolina mountains and doing some. This is Durham, North Carolina, and their HR department is looking for someone. So let's just go up and see if I can find this, an external link. There we go. Now I'm here. I can actually download this RFP notification. Clicks on it. At this point, once again, if I have questions about this actual RFP, that I'm going to need to respond to them using the method they tell me. Okay, and in order to get that response, okay, and get them to reply. But if I just technically you want Mark to work with me to walk you through it, I'll be glad to do that. You just give me a call. As we go through here, what I'm going to start doing is picking through the type of information that we were looking at. This is a pre-request. So this is a notice that something's coming out soon. And they're going to ask for invitations on July 28th about. And so right now they're seeing who's probably interested. So it's a combination. So we told you those different types of instruments. Oftentimes local governments and others will kind of merge those processes together and in order to what benefits them. So here they're going to probably bring to the table qualified firms who can bid. So first you got to give them your qualifications and that you're interested in working with them. And then they're going to start giving me some indicators. Like, for example, how many full-time employees? 312. This is just slightly outside my wheelhouse, a little bit bigger, so I probably would not bid on this. I know that going into it. This right here require a larger team. I don't necessarily know I want to do that. So you're going to start thinking through those. Give me my background, project delivery, but that purpose is the scope of work is right here. It really is. It speaks to me. So I'm starting to read through it. Okay. Here are the deliverables ordered. So whenever they order the deliverables, what I need to do when I'm writing a response back to them is respond in an order process back to them as well. Oftentimes I'll take each section and I'll put it at the title and then I'll give the answer right afterwards. I don't complicate it. Okay. You don't have to have any fancy writing of any sort. I go ahead and answer the question. This is what they're looking for and what they're hoping for I can accomplish. I tell them how I'm going to do that. Okay. How do I do it? What's my methodology for doing this type of work? Okay, and so I'm going to read through there. And if I come across some parts of it I can't do, for example, let's say FLSA, I'm not an FLSA person. I will have to bring in someone to help me. And that person has better experience in that. And then I will share that with them. Okay, and have that. Then they speak to other issues that the government's trying to deal with and accomplish, is, for example, their diversity, equity, and inclusion clause. And oftentimes they'll tell you these type of things. When they do that, if you can address that in your response back, I do. Okay. And that's an important way to kind of marry up together that here's why you should work with me. Okay. And then they give me a schedule, how they're going to do things. I'm going to be ready to answer the schedule. I'm going to be prepared to have my proposal written and back to them by August 28th. Okay. I'm going to make sure I attend the pre-proposal meeting, even if it's voluntary. I'm going to make sure I attend. Most of these now will be remote. However, if it's in person, it pays to do that if this is a project that I want to pursue. Okay. Even if I need to pay somebody to go and sit in that room for my company, that I can do that. Okay. They're also going to give me the evaluation criteria. And let's just look at here. Expertise, experience, 20%. Understanding what they're asking for, 15%. Ability to complete on time, 10%. Time schedule itself, another 10. Thoroughness of your response, 25. That's the largest thing, that you actually address what they're talking about. Okay. References, 5%. Proposed cost to the city. Cost is only 15%. That means that 85% is based on something beyond cost. Okay. So why would I go in there and bid low cost on this? Okay. Why would I try to buy that business? This doesn't make sense. And I'm really trying to sell myself in these other areas because that's where all the points are at. Okay. And understand that it's not going to be a complicated method for scoring these. It's not going to be a bunch of experts at scoring. It's going to be average Joes, average Janes sitting in a room, reading your proposal and giving you their best qualified answer scoring system on those points. So it pays for you to take your proposal before, practice with maybe your people in your office and let them evaluate using the same method. Okay. And use the same point system whenever you do that. Okay. And so that page 5, we're there. It's over with. That's not complicated at all. So this is a typical RFP request. Let me see if that other site actually came up now as we've been sitting here. These sites take a while. This website has a problem. And there we go. The bid openings there. So all of these, sometimes you get into these quandaries with all of these systems that are meant to make you think you got to pay other companies to look at things and they try to control. So be aware that why do you apply some not bidwinked and how not to fall to prey to different practices. They're sometimes not the best practices. And so know that. So here it's a barrier of all kinds to get you into that. And so it's frustrating sometimes. Don't get too frustrated though, because on these here, once you figure out how to get into them, you might be the only one. And so make sure you get there and you have persistence when you do that. So here we are today. We walked you through the RFP. We took a look at an actual one. Oh, I mentioned to you about chat RFP. So chat RFP, just a little fancy name, but there's a great little tool that we link to called Chat PDF. It's already available online. It's basically free for most users. And you can go in, you can take an actual, let's take this RFP bid. This is going to be a PDF. I think I can just go in and drop that in. Let's see here. I've got here it is right at the beginning. For my URL, type that in, see if it says go get it. What happens? Goes and finds it, pulls that in, tells me about this. Maybe it gives me some questions to start asking. What is the purpose of the classification study? Okay, so I can ask that question. It prompts me, helps me understand. So if I'm new and I'm a little bit intimidated, this is a great tool to really get in there. And I encourage you to try to use some of these tools to your best advantage. Okay, but only at a certain level these days. I still, it doesn't replace you. Okay, don't ever think it will. It's there to help you. Use it as a tool, like you use a calculator when you're working with math, and it gives you these prompts. But then it learns prompts that you want to know as well. How many employees and so forth. Pay plans. So these questions that you want to have, stack in your Google Drive, in your Google folder, start building up questions that you or prompts that's referred to for now these types of services that can help you really go in there and determine and pinpoint for the project. It just saves you time. I can run this, let it answer the questions for me while I can take another phone call and get back to it. So it don't lose my train of thought. I can even save it to my chat history and come back and work with in future. These are just great AI tools. And we do classes on how to use some of those in the future. So here we are. And I've talked to you today in a number of different ways about RFPs. We sought to, in our objective, we talked about, actually looked at one, gave you some experiential learning. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you would like to have. Chat RFP is not, it's just a terminology that we're using right now, maybe something to come soon. We'll see about that. But it is something that, and I don't want to tease too much, we intend to have a product out here shortly that will help you specifically with requests for proposals. And here today, our purpose altogether, we try to accomplish those. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, always reach out to us. We're available. Contact us, 800-492-8523. We're located in Atlanta, Georgia, and we serve this marketplace. About 120,000 of you nowadays coming and using us in some capacity, and we thank you for that. Have a great afternoon.